Now, our political correspondent Simon Harris is in Birmingham tonight, where the Conservative Party conference is taking place. So, Simon, what else can we expect from there in the next few days?
Faye, last week the Conservatives chose their candidate to take on Sadiq Khan in the next London mayoral election in 2020. For those Tories who have no idea who Sean Bailey is or what he stands for, they'll get their chance this week when Mr Bailey makes his first speech as candidate to the conference here in Birmingham. But it's another politician with links to City Hall who's likely to be making the biggest headlines. Boris Johnson, the former mayor, now a London MP, is expected to draw a huge crowd when he addresses a rally here at the conference on Tuesday lunchtime. Everyone here is wondering if this is going to be the moment when he signals his intention to challenge Theresa May. On Tuesday, the Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, we're told, will announce a £200 million fund to tackle violent crime and a new approach to a problem that has so far claimed around 100 lives of Londoners this year. And violent crime and London's murder rate is something we'll be talking to the Prime Minister about tomorrow on ITV News London at 6 o'clock. OK, Simon, we'll look forward to that. Thank you.
The Prime Minister today told ITV London the rise in violent crime in the capital was not the fault of her government. Theresa May said a fall in police numbers had no bearing on crime figures. She spoke to our political correspondent Simon Harris at the Tory party conference in Birmingham, who began by asking what she's doing to tackle knife crime.
If we look at what we've been able to do in relation to knife crime, we see we're actually catching and prosecuting more people for carrying a knife or blade, and they're more likely to go to jail and for longer. But there is a need for us to do more, and that's why we have launched our serious violence strategy. At the heart of that is not just dealing with crimes once they've happened, but actually trying to prevent those crimes from occurring in the first place. A lot of that's about working with young people to dissuade them from carrying knives, because if they carry a knife, they're more likely to become a victim.
Let me tell you about a boy we spoke to after a recent murder in Camden in North London in the summer. He was 13 years old. His name was Nino. This is what he had to say. Back in the day, you could hang around, you could play football and nothing would happen, but now you just have to go straight home because you don't know what's out there. That's no way for 13-year-olds to live, is it?
I recognise the concern there is about the level of knife crime. That's why it's right that we're taking action through the serious violence strategy and other things as well. The offensive weapons bill that we're putting through Parliament, which will give extra powers in relation to stopping young people, particularly from having some of these particularly dangerous types of knife. But
why haven't you met Sadiq Khan, the mayor? He's asked for a meeting with you about this problem since February.
Well, Sadiq Khan is part of the group that we have on our serious violence strategy. Sadiq Khan, of course, is the police commissioner for London.
But you won't meet with him.
He's responsible for the... Well, I meet with Sadiq Khan from time to time, but what matters is on the serious violence strategy, Sadiq Khan is sitting around the table with ministers, with others.
Do you accept falling police numbers has contributed to the problem?
If you look over time, actually, you'll see there's no direct causation between police numbers and levels of crime. But I recognise that we're seeing this problem in relation to violent crime, in relation to knife crime in particular. That's why the government is acting. That's why we're dealing with the serious violence.
But people want to see more police on the streets, not fewer.
I think what people want to see is to make sure that action is being taken.
That's more police.
Not just to deal with the potential for crime on the streets in the sense of dealing with that crime, but actually to try to stop that from happening in the first place. That's about early intervention. It's about working with young people. It's about ensuring that young people are dissuaded from carrying knives. It's about dealing with other issues, such as issues around drugs and gangs. But you don't think more police on the streets, more bobbies on the beat would help? It's about dealing with drugs and gangs. What we have been doing as a government is ensuring that as we have seen changes in crime, as policing has needed to change, we've been responding to that.
Prime Minister, thank you.
Oh, well, Simon, Theresa May defending her record on violent crime there. What do you think people will make of what she's been saying?
Well, what we heard the Prime Minister say then, Lucrezia, was there is no link, no direct causation, as she put it, between police numbers and the crime rate. But whenever you go onto an estate in London where someone has been murdered, you hear the same thing. We never see any police. Certainly the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, thinks the rising rate in violence and the fall in police numbers, there is a link between those, and even the Met Commissioner, Cressida Dick, admitted earlier this year that it would be naive to think that fewer police on the streets was having no impact. What isn't disputed is the fact that police numbers have fallen from more than 33,000 in London in 2010 to closer to 29,000 now. What is contested is who's responsible. Mr Khan and Labour blame government austerity measures. Meanwhile, ministers say it's the fault of the last Labour government for making austerity necessary.
All right, Simon in Birmingham, thank you. Well, next tonight, it was London's former mayor, Boris Johnson, who stole the show at the Conservative Party conference today. The Uxbridge MP was only speaking at a fringe event away from the main conference hall, but in front of a packed audience. His attack on Theresa May's Brexit plans received arguably the loudest and longest applause of the week so far. Well, our political correspondent Simon Harris is in Birmingham for us tonight. Simon, the former Foreign Secretary really stirring things up for Theresa May.
Lucrezia, ever since he was elected mayor in 2008, Boris Johnson has been one of the star turns at the Tory conference, much to the annoyance of the party leadership. He's almost always surrounded by speculation about his own leadership ambitions, and this year was no different. When the Boris circus swept into town, there was the usual mayhem, as the now lowly backbench MP for Uxbridge was mobbed by photographers and TV crews. While his former cabinet colleagues were making their speeches to the half-empty main hall, many delegates chose to go outside and join the queue for Mr Johnson's speech, which meant, by contrast, his auditorium was packed for his speech. And for his fans, he pressed all the right buttons when it came to Brexit and Mrs May's troubled Chequers plan.
It is dangerous and unstable, politically and economically. My fellow Conservatives, this is not democracy. That is not what we voted for. This is the moment. This is the moment to do that. And there is time. This is the moment to chuck Chequers.
It wasn't quite the long-awaited launch of a leadership campaign, but it was another audition. And Mr Johnson effectively gave Mrs May an ultimatum: abandon Chequers or the voters will never forgive you.
Simon, away from Boris, the Tories were talking tough on crime today, but your interview with the Prime Minister on that issue last night doesn't seem to have gone down well in some quarters.
No, when I spoke to Mrs May, I put to her what Sadiq Khan has been saying, that police cuts mean fewer officers and inevitably that means more crime. Well, Mrs May's response has infuriated the Police Federation, the union which represents many police officers. This is what Mrs May said to me.
If you look over time, actually, you'll see there's no direct causation between police numbers and levels of crime.
I genuinely believe that the Prime Minister is delusional if she thinks that there is no link between a massive, considerable drop in police officer numbers, over 20,000, and the epidemic in violent crime at the moment.
Tomorrow, Mrs May gets to defy all her critics with her big speech to the conference, but before that, there's a warm-up act in the form of the recently chosen Conservative candidate for Mayor of London, Sean Bailey. Lucrezia.
All right, Simon, see you tomorrow. Next tonight, the man who says he will be the next Mayor of London set out his case at the Conservative Party conference today. Sean Bailey said as a working-class black man, he was about opportunity and hope for Londoners. He talked about crime in the capital too, saying it was devastating. And he laid into Sadiq Khan, calling him a showbiz mayor. Well, our political correspondent Simon Harris was in Birmingham to see how his speech went down at conference.
My name is Sean Bailey and I will be the next Mayor of London. Thank you very much.
Sean Bailey isn't troubled by self-doubt, and he isn't ashamed of ripping off ideas from his rival. Remember Sadiq Khan, son of a bus driver? This was Bailey's version.
The grandson of a Jamaican soldier, the son of an NHS receptionist who grew up in a council house in London and is now your Conservative candidate for Mayor of London.
At least he knew which party he's in. The official introducing him to the audience almost got it wrong.
I'm very proud about our Labour. I'm very proud about the candidate that we've chosen to take on the Labour mayor.
Over the next 18 months, Londoners will become very familiar with the insults and attacks as the Bailey-Khan contest gathers momentum.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Showbiz Sadiq, a man for the red carpet, not for the streets, and he has destroyed the Conservative legacy in London.
The hall wasn't packed for Sean Bailey's speech. Many seats were empty, much to the frustration of those stuck outside. Not everyone who wanted to hear Mr Bailey's speech was able to. This queue still isn't being allowed into the hall more than 10 minutes after he left the stage.
It's disappointing. We don't necessarily want to air our laundry in public, but it's a bit of a shambles. We've been in the queue for 2 hours. There are people who got here after us, and they're seated upstairs. So, I mean, I don't want to blame these lovely people. They're doing their best they can, but it seems like this has not been the most organised thing the party's ever done.
But those who did get in seem to buy Bailey's message.
Amazing. The next Mayor of London, he's young, he's enthusiastic.
He will be the next Mayor of London.
He really drove home that this party is, but always has been, the party for people to work hard and achieve and go as far as they can.
I think we've just seen the new Mayor of London.
Sean Bailey delivered a confident performance, but if he thought skipping off stage would be a showstopper, he clearly had no idea what was coming next. But then who did? Simon Harris, ITV News, Birmingham.
Next tonight, the Mayor was accused of misleading Londoners today over what he knew about delays to the Crossrail project. Assembly members at City Hall say they believe Sadiq Khan had been told the project wouldn't be ready by December as planned 6 weeks before it was publicly announced. He denies that, saying he only found out 2 days before the rest of us. And with more, here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
Crossrail is in deep trouble, over budget and overdue. The price tag has risen to more than £15 billion. The royal opening is on hold. Now questions are being asked about who knew what and when. Did the Mayor mislead Londoners? And did TfL keep the truth from financial regulators? This is where it all started going wrong for Crossrail. In November last year, 2 electrical transformers exploded at this substation in Pudding Mill Lane on the edge of the Olympic Park in East London. Without electricity, the new trains couldn't be tested. The London Assembly claims on July the 19th a board meeting was told about a possible delay to the December opening. 5 days later, on July the 24th, a government minister announced a £590 million bailout for the project, but didn't mention any delay. It wasn't until August the 31st that a delay of almost a year was announced publicly.
What became very clear in the hearings we've had is that the Mayor was absolutely told in July that it was unlikely it would open in December, and yet he has stuck to the line that he didn't find out until the end of August, and that just isn't true.
You're saying he's a liar?
I'm saying he's absolutely misled our committee and he's misled Londoners.
In a letter to the Mayor, the Transport Committee says the accounts we have heard have at times seemed partial and contradictory. The Mayor insists he was in the dark about the full extent of the delay right up until a TfL board meeting at the end of August.
Well, the first time I knew there's going to be the long delay for Crossrail opening, the central section, autumn 2019 was towards the end of August, was around the time the Crossrail board met. And one of the things that I'm looking into is how it's possible that we as the joint sponsors, the DfT and TfL are both joint sponsors, weren't told until very late in the day, 3 months before the central section should open, there's going to be this long delay.
There are also questions about what TfL told the city. When it notified the London Stock Exchange about the government bailout in July, again, there was no mention of a possible delayed opening. In the city, that's raised eyebrows.
Transport for London, although a public body, does issue bonds, tradable debt, and investors buy that debt. And therefore, they need to know the financial situation of the company they have lent money to.
City Hall says the Mayor has now asked Crossrail bosses to investigate whether he and ministers could have been told earlier about the threat of a postponed opening.
So, Simon, if it turns out the Mayor did know, what could the consequences be for him?
Well, Sadiq Khan is both a lawyer and a politician. As a lawyer, he chooses his words carefully. We heard him there talking about when he first knew about a long delay. Does that mean he knew earlier about a delay, just not that it was going to be 9 months long? As a politician, he will also be aware of an unwritten rule. You can make a mistake, but don't try to cover it up. As the old saying goes, it's not the cock-up that gets you, but the cover-up. Now, Sadiq Khan is adamant there is no cover-up. He only knew about it a few days before the rest of us, and he's sticking to that. If he's accurate, he has absolutely nothing to worry about. But I'd put money on somebody's head rolling over this.
All right, Simon, thank you.